She didn't ask for the job. She didn't ask for anything. She just stood in the doorway of the Harrow Creek post office with a canvas bag over one shoulder and mud on her boots, and told Postmaster Dunning that she could sort mail faster than whoever he had now, and she could prove it in 10 minutes if he'd let her try. He let her try. She was faster. That was how Vera Ames came to Harrow Creek, Montana, in the autumn of 1887. Not with a plan, not with a letter of introduction or a family connection or any of the things a woman was supposed to arrive with. She came with a bag and a particular kind of stillness that people either trusted immediately or didn't trust at all, and very few people in between. Cutter Hale had sent away 9 women in 6 years, not cruelly. He never raised his voice. He never said anything unkind. He simply looked at each one of them with the flat gray eyes of a man who had already made his calculations and found the sum wanting, and within days, sometimes hours, each woman came to understand, without being told directly, that whatever she had hoped to find in Harrow Creek was not inside that man and was not going to be. 9 women. 6 years. The whole county had stopped trying. Drop the name of your town in the comments and stay with me all the way to the end. You'll want to. Cutter Hale was 38 years old and owned the largest cattle operation in Cascade County, 12,000 acres. 340 head. A crew of 40 men who would have walked barefoot into a blizzard if he'd asked them to without needing to know why. He had built every inch of it himself, starting at 22 with a borrowed horse, a quarter section of scrubland, and the specific kind of stubbornness that either kills a man or makes him rich. It had made him rich. What it had not made him was easy to be near. The post office sat at the edge of town, which meant Vera Ames saw Cutter Hale for the first time on her 3rd morning in Harrow Creek, when he came in before 7 to collect whatever the Territorial Land Office had sent him, and collect it without conversation. He came through the door without looking up, set his name on the counter without greeting Dunning, held out his hand for the mail. Vera set it in his hand. He looked up then, because the hand that gave it to him was not the hand he expected. She looked back. That was the whole of it. A second, maybe 2. Then he took his mail and left, and Dunning exhaled like he'd been holding it. "That's Cutter Hale," Dunning said. "I know," Vera said. She'd been in town 3 days. Everyone knew within 1. Dunning waited, the way people waited when they expected a woman to say something more about Cutter Hale. Something about his eyes, or his jaw, or the particular way he filled up a doorframe. Vera went back to sorting the eastbound parcels. Dunning, after a moment, went back to his ledger. The thing about Vera Ames, the thing that would take Harrow Creek several months to fully understand, was that she did not perform reactions. She had them, real ones, sometimes at inconvenient times, but she did not produce them on demand for an audience, and she did not dress them up in something more acceptable than what they actually were. This was unusual in a woman of 28 in 1887, in a small Montana cattle town where everyone watched everyone and everyone had an opinion about everything, and those opinions moved through the community faster than weather. She had come from Billings. Before Billings, from a town in Nebraska that she did not name voluntarily and that no one yet knew to ask the right questions about. What she had left behind was a husband. Not left, outlasted. Daniel Ames had died in the spring 14 months ago of a lung sickness that had been coming for 3 years before it arrived, and Vera had watched it come with the particular helplessness of a person who could see a thing clearly and still not stop it. She had nursed him. She had kept the house. She had held everything together with both hands until there was nothing left to hold, and then she had packed the canvas bag and gone west. Not because west had anything specific to offer her, but because every direction that was not backward felt like the same reasonable option. She was not grieving. Exactly. Or she was grieving something, but not the man's himself. She was grieving the years. The specific years of being needed in a way that left no room for being anything else. She had discovered, in the month since, that she did not entirely know what she was when nothing was required of her. She was working on finding out. Cutter Hale came in every weekday at 6:58. Not 7, 6:58. Vera knew this by the 2nd week. By the 3rd week, she had his mail set aside and waiting so he didn't have to ask. He noticed. He didn't say anything, but he noticed, and the noticing was visible for half a second before he tucked it away. She noticed him noticing. He didn't say anything for 17 days. On the 18th day, he came in at 6:58 and picked up his mail, and then, instead of leaving, stood at the counter for a moment longer than necessary. He appeared to be looking at the territorial map Vera had pinned to the wall behind her, the one she'd put up because it helped her track delivery routes, but she understood he was not looking at the map. "You sorted the Hendricks parcel wrong last Thursday," he said finally. "Should have gone to Hendricks on the North Road, not Hendricks on the Crow." "I know," Vera said. "I fixed it the same morning. Dunning didn't mention it." A pause. "Dunning doesn't notice most things," Cutter said. "I know that too," Vera said. He picked up his mail. He left. But at the door he paused for just a moment, not looking back, just pausing, and she had the sense that he had come in planning to say something else, something further, and had changed his mind at the last second and settled for the parcel remark instead. She went back to the parcels. But she sat with that pause for longer than she intended. Mrs. Dean, who ran the boarding house where Vera was staying, told her about the 9 women over supper on a Thursday in October. Not unkindly. She told it the way people in small towns tell cautionary stories, with a kind of fond exasperation. The way you describe a landmark that everyone knows is a little dangerous, but that's been there long enough to become part of the geography. There had been a woman from Helena, 2 sisters from a family in Great Falls, who had come separately and left within the same week. A widow with grown children who had seemed promising until she tried to rearrange his kitchen and found herself on the road back to town by nightfall. On and on. 9 total. Mrs. Dean had a particular kind of satisfaction in the telling of them, not in their failure exactly, but in the accuracy of her predictions regarding each one. "He's not a bad man," Mrs. Dean said, in the tone of someone completing a sentence that began unspoken. "He's just," she trailed off, refilled the gravy. "Just what?" Vera asked. Mrs. Dean thought about it with genuine care. "Sealed," she said finally. "Like a jar put up so tight even the person who sealed it forgot how." Vera ate her dinner. She thought about sealed jars. "Who sealed him?" she asked. Mrs. Dean looked up. It was apparently not the question she'd expected. "A woman," she said after a moment, "years ago. Before he had all of it, before the land mostly. She left in the winter. Nobody talks about it directly. They just talk around it." "Well," Mrs. Dean said, "yes." Vera said nothing. She understood about things people talked around. The trouble came in November, which in Montana meant trouble on top of cold, which is its own particular category of difficult. 3 of Cutter Hale's fence lines on the South Range had been cut in the same week. Not weathered through, not broken by cattle pressure, cut. Clean and deliberate. Cutter had ridden out himself to confirm it and had come back with the specific expression of a man who has added 2 and 2 and arrived at a number he doesn't like. Vera knew about it because the county sheriff, Breck, came in to send a telegram to the territorial office and mentioned it to Dunning in the way people mention things they expect to travel, which is to say loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. She filed it away the way she filed everything, without deciding yet what to do with it. 2 days later, a man came into the post office who was not from Harrow Creek. Vera knew it in the way you know things after 3 months in a small town, something in the quality of his looking around, the specific unfamiliarity of a person who has not yet learned which corners to ignore. He was well dressed in the particular way of men who work in offices and want you to know it. He asked for a certified letter addressed to Cutter Hale. Vera checked the registry. The letter was there. "I'll need Mr. Hale to collect it himself," she said. "Certified letters require the recipient's signature." The man smiled. It was a smile that had practice in it. "I'm authorized to receive on his behalf," the man said. "I'm an associate of his legal representative." "Then his legal representative can send written authorization," Vera said. "Without that, the letter stays until Mr. Hale comes for it himself." The man's smile thinned by a fraction. He left. Vera watched him go. Then she took the certified letter and moved it to the locked drawer below the counter, which was technically where certified correspondence lived anyway, but which she had not bothered to use before now. Cutter came in the next morning at 6:58. She told him about the man before she handed him his regular mail. He went very still, not tense, still, the way certain animals went still before they decided what something was. "Describe him," he said. She did, precisely. Height, coloring, the cut of his coat, the particular softness of his hands that said he did not do physical labor, the way he'd looked at the door when he left, which was toward the east end of town and not toward the livery or the hotel. Cutter looked at her for a moment. "You noticed all of that," he said. "I notice most things," she said. "It's the job. He held her gaze for a second longer than necessary, then he said, "I'd like my certified letter." She got it from the locked drawer. He signed for it. He read it standing at the counter, which he had never done before. She did not read it with him, but she could see from the quality of his stillness as he read that it was not good news. He folded it. He put it in his coat. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping it." It was the first time he'd said thank you to her. She noted it without displaying that she'd noted it. "That's the job too," she said. He left, but again that pause at the door, longer this time. The certified letter was a claim filed against the south quarter of his land, 4,000 acres along the creek bed, by a development company out of Helena that was seeking a right-of-way for a proposed freight line. The claim cited an irregularity in the original homestead patent from 1871. Vera found this out not from Cutter, who did not volunteer information to anyone, but from Mrs. Dean, who had it from the sheriff's wife, who had it from the land registry clerk, which was the standard information chain in Harrow Creek, and was faster than any telegram. She thought about what she knew about homestead patents, which was more than most people expected. Her father had spent 2 years fighting a similar claim in Nebraska. He had lost. The thing that had beaten him was not the law, which had been on his side, but the cost of the lawyers required to argue the law, which had not been. He had sold the East 40 at below value just to fund the legal fight for the rest of it, and even winning had cost them more than losing might have. She thought about the man with the soft hands who had wanted to collect a certified letter on behalf of someone else. She thought about the cut fence lines. On a Tuesday morning, when the post office was empty except for the two of them, she said, when Cutter came for his mail, "The South Quarter claim. Is it the creek access they want or the acreage itself?" He went still again. The specific stillness of a man who has not discussed his problems with anyone and is recalibrating to the fact that someone has just referenced them without being invited to. "Both," he said carefully. "Freight line needs the corridor. Water access makes the corridor worth having, and the patent irregularity they're citing." A pause. He looked at her directly. "How do you know about the patent?" "Small town," she said. He almost said something that would have ended the conversation. She could see it, the familiar closing, the door shutting. Instead he said, after a moment, 16 months between the original filing and the clerk's notation. A temporary land agent handled the territory that year. His records were incomplete. Were your records complete?" "Mine were." "But if theirs are gone, then the gap exists regardless of what yours say," Vera said. "I know my father had a version of the same problem." He looked at her. Really looked. The way he hadn't quite done in 17 days of 6:58 mornings. "What happened?" he said. "He lost the East 40, she said. He kept the rest. But it took everything he had to keep it, and he was never the same after." The post office was very quiet. "I'm sorry," Cutter said. It came out simply, without ceremony, like a man who only said things he meant. "It was a long time ago," she said. He picked up his mail. Then he put it back down. "The company has done this before," he said. "In Wyoming, twice. Both ranchers sold before the hearings closed. The company's counting on the same here. Are there other ranchers with patents from the same period?" she asked. "Same temporary agent." He looked at her for a moment. "Probably," he said. "If their patents have the same gap," she said carefully, "they have the same exposure. And a joint challenge is a different kind of argument than a single one." He was quiet. She could not tell if she had gone too far. She had a tendency, she knew, to go too far in a straight line before reading the room, which was something Daniel had told her more than once, and which she had not been able to fully correct because she could not entirely distinguish between going too far and simply being direct. "You've thought about this for a while," Cutter said. "Since the man with the certified letter," she said. "That was 11 days ago." Something crossed his face, unreadable at first, and then not entirely. "Why?" he said. She held his gaze. It was a fair question. She was a postal worker who had been in town 3 months, not his lawyer, not his neighbor, not anything to him except the person who handed him his mail. "Because it's a wrong thing being done to someone who doesn't deserve it," she said, "and I've had the information sitting in my head for 11 days, and it seemed wasteful not to say it." He picked up his mail. He was quiet for a long moment. "I'll need to look at the other patents," he said finally. "I know the land registry clerk. I can ask to review the filings from that period. If you find the names," she said, "I can tell you which ones still receive mail in the county. That narrows down who's reachable." He looked at her again with the particular expression she had begun to recognize, the one that recalibrated each time she said something he hadn't anticipated. "All right," he said. He left. This time there was no pause at the door. He came back at noon. Vera was alone, Dunning being at his dinner. Cutter set a folded piece of paper on the counter without preamble. 7 names, he said. All filed in the same 18-month period. She unfolded it. 6 of the 7 received mail in the county. She knew the boxes. "Leave me a list of what you need," she said. "I'll pull what I can from the route records. Delivery addresses, at minimum." He looked at her for a moment. "Why are you helping me?" he said. She thought about it genuinely, because she owed him a genuine answer. "Because you haven't once asked me to," she said. "And I find that restful." He stared at her. Then, for the first time in 3 months of 6:58 mornings, Cutter Hale laughed. It was short and surprised and real, the laugh of a man who hadn't done it in a while and wasn't entirely sure how, and it lasted only a second before he got it back under control. But it had happened. She had seen it. She went back to the parcels. The work they did over the following weeks was not romantic. It was paperwork and cold rides and 2 meetings in the land registry office and 1 very tense conversation with the county sheriff about what constituted interference with a legal filing versus ordinary civic procedure. Vera was not present at the meetings. She was present for the preparation and the aftermath, which turned out to be the most useful positions. She identified which ranchers were reachable. She helped Cutter draft the letter that went out to each one, not because he asked her to, but because she was there when he was trying to write it. And the 3rd attempt was no better than the 2nd, and she said, simply, "May I?" And he handed her the pen without argument. He read what she wrote. "That's better," he said. "I know," she said, not unkindly, just as a fact. He did not appear bothered by this. The ranchers were skeptical at first. Men who had been fighting their own land for 20 years did not quickly trust an argument that required them to trust each other. There were 2 meetings at a neutral location, a church hall in the next town over, and both of them were difficult in the specific way of men who are in agreement about the facts and disagreement about the strategy and pride mixed up in both. Cutter was better at the 2nd meeting than the 1st. Not a different man, with the same flat economy of words, the same absence of performance, but more patient, more willing to stay in the room when it got uncomfortable instead of ending the discussion with the finality that came naturally to him. Afterward, riding back through the November dark, he said to the rancher beside him, a weathered man named Alcott whose land bordered his on the west, "We'll hold." Alcott looked at him. "You sure?" Alcott said. Cutter was quiet for a moment. "No," he said, "but we'll hold." Alcott nodded. That was enough. What Vera did not tell Cutter, because there was no easy moment, and she was not ready to find one, was that she had received her own letter. It came from Nebraska, forwarded through 2 addresses before it found her. It was from Daniel's mother, a woman named Vera Ames, who had never liked her, and had spent 3 years of Daniel's illness compiling evidence to support that position. The letter was 5 pages long, and accomplished nothing except to locate, with the precision of someone who had thought carefully about where to press, every doubt Vera carried about herself and pressed there. She had not been a good wife. She had been cold when warmth was needed. She had put Daniel's illness at a distance in order to manage it, and in doing so, had failed to love him the way he deserved. She had left too easily for a woman of conscience. She had rebuilt herself from a marriage she had been partially responsible for ruining, and anyone who took her in would find out eventually what she was capable of letting happen to a person who needed her. Vera read it twice. Then she put it in the stove. She knew it was mostly untrue. She had told herself this 11 times with the calm precision she applied to most things, and she believed it in the upper portion of herself, the reasoned portion, the one that assessed evidence and reached conclusions. In the lower portion, where old voices lived regardless of what the evidence said, the letter sat like a stone. She became efficient in a way that was 1 shade past her usual efficiency. This was the external signal, the one people who knew her well would have caught. The way she cleared tasks, not because they needed clearing, but because movement kept the lower portion quiet. Cutter caught it on a Friday. He came in at 6:58, and she had his mail ready as always, and she handed it to him without quite looking directly at him, which was different from her usual, which was to look at everything directly, and he stood at the counter for a moment after taking the mail. "What happened?" he said. She looked up. She arranged her face. Nothing happened, she said. He held her gaze. He had the patience of a man who understood waiting, and knew that most things came out in their own time if you did not crowd them. She looked away first, which almost never happened. He did not push. He left. He came back at noon. He came back at 4. Both times she was with customers or dunning, and both times he had a legitimate reason, a package, a question about an outbound parcel, and both times he didn't say anything about the morning and she didn't either. At 5 o'clock, a minute before she locked up, he came back a third time. The post office was empty. He stood at the counter. He did not have a package or a question. "I'm fine," she said before he could say anything. "I know you are," he said. "You're the most capable person I've dealt with in 6 years. And I don't have any doubt you're fine." A pause. "That's not what I asked." She looked at him. "You didn't ask anything," she said. "I didn't." The post office was very quiet. Outside, the wind was doing what Montana wind did in November, which was everything at once. "I got a letter," she said. "From Nebraska. From my husband's mother." He waited. "Daniel died 14 months ago," she said. "Lung sickness. His mother has since deciding what I was responsible for." "What does she say you were responsible for?" he said. Flat, direct, no inflection, just the question. "His unhappiness," Vera said. "His isolation, the way he turned inward near the end. She says I kept him at a distance when he needed me close." Silence. "Did you?" Cutter said. It was the question she hadn't let herself answer, not with that precision, not in those words. She felt it land in the lower portion. "I managed him," she said. "The way you manage something you cannot fix. I kept the house. I kept the books. I kept everything running because if I stopped running it, everything would fall, and I had decided that keeping things running was the same as keeping him." She stopped. It wasn't. Cutter was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you believe?" he said. "Or what she says you should believe?" She looked at him. "I don't know yet," she said. "That's the honest answer." He nodded once. He turned his hat in his hands, one rotation, the gesture she'd come to recognize as his version of collecting himself. "When I was 24, he said, there was a woman who told me that I was going to be worth loving someday, once I'd built something real. She said it like a promise. I believed it for almost 2 years. A pause. Then the second winter came, and the money ran out, and she made a different calculation. Vera looked at him. "She wasn't wrong about what you'd build. No," he said. "She was wrong about the condition." The quiet after that was a different kind. Not uncomfortable. The kind that comes after two people have put something real on a surface between them, and neither of them is moved to take it back. "Your husband's mother is wrong," he said. "I've watched you for 3 months. I don't know what you were in Nebraska, but here you see everything. You fix what's broken before anyone notices it needs fixing, and you stay inside difficult things without looking for the exit. That is not a woman who kept people at a distance." Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went bright in a way she was managing with effort. "Don't be kind right now," she said quietly. "I'm not being kind," he said. "I'm being accurate. There's a difference." She pressed her lips together. She looked at the counter. After a moment, she said, "You came back 3 times today." "Yes," he said. "Why?" He held her gaze. "Because you looked like someone who was carrying something alone," he said. "And I've been that person for 6 years, and I know what it costs, and I didn't want you to have to." She looked at him for a long time. The wind outside. The last gray light through the window. "Thank you," she said. She meant it fully. He nodded once, put his hat back on. "Lock up properly," he said. "Wind's getting worse." He left. She stood at the counter for a while. Then she locked up properly. December arrived, and the coalition of 6 ranchers filed their joint challenge with the Territorial Land Office, and Cutter Hale's attorney in Helena submitted the documentation that Vera had helped organize across 4 evenings at the post office table, the registry records cross-referenced against the original homestead filings, the chain of ownership annotated, the gap in the temporary agent's records isolated and contextualized against the broader record of that period to show it as a processing failure rather than a title defect. It was good work. Cutter said so, and Cutter did not say things he didn't mean. "Your handwriting is better than my attorney's," he said, reviewing the final organization. "Your attorney charges you by the hour," she said. "I have other incentives." He looked up from the documents. "What incentives?" he said. She thought about it. "It's interesting," she said, "the work, and I'm good at it." "Is that sufficient?" he said. She looked at him steadily. "What else would be?" she said. He held her gaze for a moment. "Nothing," he said. "That's sufficient." He went back to the documents. She went back to hers. But the temperature in the room had shifted by a degree, subtle as that, and both of them felt it, and both of them let it sit without naming it, which was a kind of agreement. Christmas came and went quietly. The post office was busy with parcels, and Vera worked through it with the efficiency that had become her reputation in Harrow Creek, and Mrs. Dean baked something that involved cinnamon and left a portion at the post office with a card that said nothing but had 2 sets of initials, which was Mrs. Dean's particular version of subtlety. Cutter came in on Christmas Eve at his usual time. He had a parcel to send, which was the official reason. The parcel was addressed to a children's hospital in Helena, no return address which she noticed and which he did not comment on. She handed him a small paper sack of the hard peppermints she had started keeping at the counter for the children who came in with their parents. He looked at it. "It's Christmas," she said. He took it. He put it in his coat pocket. "Thank you," he said. "Merry Christmas, Cutter," she said. It was the first time she had used his given name without the formality of the last. It arrived naturally, without plan. He stood at the counter for a moment. "Merry Christmas, Vera," he said. He left. She watched the door close. Mrs. Dean was going to be insufferable about the initials card. The resolution from the Territorial Land Office came in February, which in Montana was the month that lasted longest and demanded the most. Cutter read it at the counter. She watched his face. Clean title confirmed. All 6 properties. The development company's claim dismissed as relying on documentation irregularities that, in context of the full record, did not constitute a viable title challenge. He put the letter down. "Well," he said. "Well," she said. He looked at her. "You built the argument," he said. "You built the coalition," she said. "The argument doesn't work without the coalition." He shook his head slowly, not in disagreement, in something else. "I don't know how to." He stopped. Started again. "I am not accustomed to being helped," she said. "Yes," he said. "I know," she said. "I've noticed." He was quiet for a moment. "Does that bother you?" he said. She thought about it honestly. "It did at first," she said. "Now it just seems like something you're working on." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. The suggestion of one. "You're very direct," he said. "I know," she said. "I meant it as a compliment," he said. "I know that too," she said. He picked up the letter, put it in his coat, picked up his regular mail. At the door he turned. Not the usual pause, a full turn, looking back at her. "There's a dinner. The ranchers who filed with me Saturday. Alcott's place. He appeared to be selecting the word carefully. "It's a celebration of the ruling." She waited. "I'd like you to come," he said, "if you're willing." She looked at him for a moment. "As what?" she said. Not coy, genuine. She needed to know what she was being invited as. He met her gaze directly. "As the person who made it possible," he said. "And as another careful selection. As the person I want there." She let that land. "All right," she said. He nodded once. "Saturday," he said. "I know when Saturday is," she said. He almost smiled again. Left. She looked at the door after it closed. She was aware that her heart was doing something unreasonable, and she did not try to make it stop. The dinner at Alcott's was loud and warm, in the way of people who have survived something together, and have not yet been separated from the relief of it. The ranchers and their families filled the long tables, and there was food that someone had worked hard at, and there was more whiskey than was strictly necessary, and everyone was grateful in the unself-conscious way of people who had genuinely been afraid of losing something and hadn't. Vera sat beside Cutter, which was where he placed her when they arrived, without ceremony, the way you place something where it belongs. The ranchers' wives were cautious at first, in the specific way women are cautious about a woman they don't know who arrives with a man like Cutter Hale, and then they were not cautious, because Vera knew what she knew, and talked the way she talked, and by the end of the meal Alcott's wife was asking her about the land registry process with genuine curiosity. Cutter watched her work the room without working the room, the way she always did, simply being exactly what she was and letting people come to their own conclusions. On the ride back to Harrow Creek, the night was cold and clear and full of stars, and they rode for a while in comfortable silence. "Alcott's wife thinks highly of you," he said. "Alcott's wife asked good questions," Vera said. "I like people who ask good questions. You were the only person at that table who knew the specific language of the filing process," he said. Everyone noticed. She glanced at him. "Does that bother you?" she said, which was the same question he'd asked her. "No," he said, immediately, without qualification. She looked at the road. "What does bother you?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. They rode. "Needing things," he said finally. "It bothers me that I'm not good at it, and it bothers me that it's visible." "It's not very visible," she said. "You see it, Ed?" "I see most things," she said. "That's still the job." "It's not the job," he said. Flat, certain, the tone he used when he had thought about something and arrived. She looked at him. "No," she said. "It isn't." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different kind of silence, and both of them knew it, and neither of them tried to fill it with something smaller than what it actually was. March came in hard, the way March did in Montana, as if winter was making one last argument before it lost. The post office was cold before 8, warm by 10, and somewhere around the second week Vera started keeping a kettle on the small stove in the back room, which was not regulation, but which Dunning chose not to notice. Cutter came in one morning, not at 6:58 but at 7:40, which was unusual enough that she looked up when he came through the door. He had been writing. His coat was damp, and his face had weather in it, and he had the look of a man who had not been to bed. "What happened?" she said. "Alcott's west line was cut last night," he said. "Same as mine in November. 3 sections." She set down what she was holding. "Alcott," she said. "Not you." "Alcott," he said. "Which means whoever is behind this decided that since the joint filing succeeded, the next move is to isolate the weakest parcel. Break the coalition by taking one piece first. Alcott can't afford a separate legal fight," she said. "No," Cutter said. "That's the calculation." She looked at the wall. At the territorial map she'd kept pinned there since October. "The original investors in the development company," she said. "Does your attorney know who they are?" "The public filing lists a holding company in Helena," he said. "The principals are not disclosed. They'd have to be somewhere," she said. "Capital transfers, bank records, even correspondence to the land office would have a signatory." She looked at him. "Dunning has contacts at the Helena Postal Registry. He went to school with the director. He's never been asked to do anything with that." Cutter looked at her. "You want to trace the correspondence," he said. "I want to know who's writing the letters," she said. "Because someone is writing them. Land companies don't file without instructions, and instructions leave paper." He was quiet. "That's not a simple ask," he said. "For Dunning, no," she said, "but it's a possible one." He held her gaze. "You'd have to ask him yourself," Cutter said. "He'd do it for you." "I know," she said. "I'm saying it's an option. The decision is yours." He turned his hat in his hands. Once, twice. "Do it," he said. She talked to Dunning that afternoon. Dunning, who was a man of modest ambition but genuine loyalty to people he liked, agreed with less reluctance than she expected. He wrote to his contact in Helena the same day. The response took 2 weeks. What it contained was a name. A single signatory on 3 successive letters to the Territorial Land Office. An attorney named Barrow, who had represented the development company in both Wyoming cases, and who had, according to a notation in the Helena registry, recently opened a correspondence with a land speculator based in Cascade County. A speculator based in Cascade County, with extensive prior dealings in cattle leases. A speculator who was not unknown to Cutter Hale. She told him when he came in the following morning. She watched his face go through several things in rapid succession, landing finally on the cold economy that she'd learned meant he was thinking faster than he was showing. "Pryor," he said. She didn't know the name. She looked at him. "Sheldon Pryor," he said. "He holds water leases on 3 of the properties in the coalition. If the joint title is broken, he renegotiates the leases from a position of strength," she said, "or buys the land outright at distressed value when the coalition dissolves," he said. "He's done it in Oregon. 2 ranches." The post office was quiet. Outside, March was making its argument. "This goes to your attorney today," Vera said, "and to the sheriff, and to Alcott so he knows why his fence was cut." "Yes," Cutter said. "And Pryor doesn't approach you directly." "He won't," Cutter said. "He never does. Then he'll approach someone near you," she said. "Someone he thinks he can use." Cutter looked at her. "He already has," he said. "He came to the post office last week, while I was there, remember? The man who asked about the registered parcel." She did remember, the soft hands, the careful smile. "That was Pryor's man," she said. "Yes," Cutter said. She thought about the locked drawer, the documented visit, the name she had made the man repeat back to her. "I have his name on record," she said, "and the date and the request he made. That's documented interference with registered correspondence." Cutter stared at her. "You didn't know it was connected," he said. "No," she said, "but I documented it anyway." He said nothing for a long moment. And then he said something she had not expected, not in the way she expected it, which was with the particular difficulty of a man who does not find this kind of sentence easy and is saying it anyway. "Vera," he said, "I need to say something." She waited. "I have been alone on that ranch for 6 years," he said. "Not because no one came, because I made certain nothing stayed. I was good at it. I told myself it was a choice I'd made." He stopped. "It wasn't a choice. It was a conclusion I'd reached, that the risk of the other thing was not worth what it cost." She held his gaze. "And now?" she said. He looked at her directly, with the flat gray eyes that Harrow Creek had spent 6 years misreading as coldness, and that she had understood from the second morning as something else entirely, a man who refused to give his eyes something they didn't mean. "Now I think I was wrong about the calculation," he said. The post office was entirely still. "This isn't the right place for this conversation," she said. "I know that," he said. "I've been waiting for the right place, and I've concluded there isn't one, so I'm having it here." She looked at him. She thought about Daniel, about the years that had made her useful and invisible in the same motion, about what it had taken to come west and start over as simply herself, whoever that was turning out to be. "I need something from you," she said. "Tell me," he said. "If I am ever wrong about something," she said. "If I do something that troubles you. You have to say it directly. Not the way people say things when they're managing the room. Actually say it, to me, and expect an actual answer." "Yes," he said, without hesitation. "And if I need something you don't know how to give," she said, "I need you to be willing to learn. Not promise. Try." "Yes," he said. She held his gaze. "I am not a simple person," she said. "I know that," he said, and the way he said it was not warning or concern. It was something closer to relief. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I have been choosing this town and this job, and staying in this particular building at this particular hour every morning for 3 months, and I have not once talked myself into leaving, which is unusual for me. I've thought about why." He waited. "I've concluded it's because of the 658, she said. Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile. "Something more than that." "Vera," he said. "Yes," she said. "I would like to court you," he said. "In whatever way means something to you, properly." She looked at him for a long moment. "Start by walking me to dinner," she said. "Tonight. Not the post office back table. An actual dinner." "All right," he said. "Mrs. Dean's at 6, she said. "I know where Mrs. Dean's is," he said. "I know you do," she said. "Everyone in this county knows where Mrs. Dean's is. I'm choosing it because she'll see, and she'll tell everyone, and I would like everyone to know." He stared at her. Then Cutter Hale laughed again, real and full this time, not the brief startled sound of December, but something that lasted 3 full seconds and changed the whole quality of the room. 6 o'clock, he said. He came at 5:58. Spring came to Harrow Creek the way it always did, reluctantly, and then all at once, and with it came the final ruling from the Territorial Land Office confirming the Coalition's title challenge and formally closing the inquiry. Sheldon Pryor's involvement was referred to the county sheriff for investigation. His landman, the one with the soft hands and the careful smile, did not return to Harrow Creek. The fence lines stayed whole. Cutter Hale came into the post office that morning at 6:58, same as always, and Vera handed him the official notice along with his regular mail, and they stood at the counter and read it together, which was different from every other morning they'd stood at that counter. "It's done," he said. "It's done," she said. He folded the notice, looked at her. "I want to ask you something," he said. "You've been working up to it for 2 weeks," she said. "I've noticed." "Of course you have," he said. She waited. "Come out to the ranch," he said. "Not for dinner. To see it. To walk the land and tell me what you think of it." She looked at him. "Why?" she said. "Because I want you to know what you'd be choosing," he said, "if you chose it, all of it. The winters, the work. The men who need managing, and the fence lines that need checking, and the kitchen that's been wrong for 6 years in ways I haven't known how to fix." He stopped. "And me, who is also wrong in certain ways, which I am also not entirely sure how to fix." She held his gaze. "I've been choosing it since January," she said. He looked at her. "I know," she said. "I'm not subtle about everything." He reached across the counter. His hand found hers on the surface, and she turned her hand over, and they held on to each other for a moment, in the quiet of the post office, in the early morning light, in the simple, unceremonious way of two people who are done pretending they haven't already decided. "Saturday," he said. "Saturday," she agreed. She looked at their hands. "You came at 5:58, she said. "Back in October, the night of the dinner. "I know," he said. "You've always been 2 minutes early," she said. "Every day." "I know that too," he said. She looked up at him. "Why?" she said. He held her gaze, with the flat gray eyes that were not cold, had never been cold, were simply the eyes of a man who had taught himself to wait for something worth looking at. "Because," he said, "I didn't want to miss a single minute." They married in June in the church at the edge of Harrow Creek, small and plain and exactly what both of them were. Mrs. Dean cried before the ceremony started and maintained that she had allergies, and no one believed her, and no one said so. The ranchers from the coalition came with their families. Alcott's wife brought food enough for twice the number. Sheriff Breck stood in the back with his hat in his hands and looked vaguely moved. The circuit preacher was brief, which was what Cutter had requested. When it was done, Vera looked at her husband and he looked at her, and she thought about all the mornings at the counter, and all the 658s, and all the careful conversations in which two people had built something honest out of something hard, brick by brick, without either of them quite announcing that's what they were doing. He took her hand the way he had in the post office in March, simple and certain, and she felt it settle in her the way true things settle, not like a wave, but like a root. She had come west looking for whoever she was when nothing was required of her. She had found out. What she was, it turned out, was exactly this. A woman who sorted the mail and noticed everything and fixed things before anyone knew they were broken, and had, at some point between October and June, quietly decided that the flat gray eyes and the 658 and the man behind both of them were worth the full weight of her choosing. And he, for his part, had learned to knock. Not on her door, literally. He'd never been a man who waited to be invited in, but on the door of something harder and more necessary, the one he'd sealed himself from the inside in a winter long ago, and had been standing on the wrong side of ever since. She hadn't broken it open. She'd just stayed long enough on the other side that he remembered there was a difference between choosing to be alone and forgetting that opening was possible. That, as it turned out, was the whole of what was needed.